your mind.
Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Internet Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Very good evening.
It's Sunday the 17th of February 2013 and we have a few bits and pieces to talk about. So without further ado, let's go over to communications and we'll take it from there, Steve.
Okie dokie. Communication, sorry. Info at OYMIreland.com for your emails during the show and also during the week as well, if you have any information that you want to send our way. We also have the guest book on the website as well. I don't need to explain what you do with the guest book, so if you want to leave a message, please do so. We also have the chat facility on the website as well, depending on which stream you are listening to us on. Just if you want to join in the chat, you can pop along to OYMIreland.com. Up in the top left-hand corner of the website, you will see the live chat button. And you can just click on that. You can log in with your real name or a pseudonym. I think that will be changing in the near future. You'll have to log in with you have to be a registered user, but we still kind of undecided on that at the moment. And lastly, you can give us a call on the landline should you wish to do so on.
Give us a call on 046 927 1212.
04692711212. If you're ringing in from outside Republic of Ireland, it's 00353 in front of that. Alan?
Steve, okay. Our guest on tonight is a lady called Heather Martin, and she's involved with the Stop Kevin Annett campaign. Now, we had Heather on not too long ago, and we only had kind of a half of an interview with Heather. So we said that, fair's fair, Kevin's been on the show twice, so we've asked Heather to come back on to talk a bit more in depth about her campaign and what's going on with that. So we'll be talking to Heather shortly in the next few minutes. So just a few things as usual that we have to go through to catch up on things that happened during the week. We are pleased to say that the bumper stickers, the bumper sticker campaign we talked about, well, the bumper stickers are now ordered. So fingers crossed. We will have them in within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll be able to get them out, which will be fantastic. And the other thing I forgot to say very quickly is, hopefully we won't have a repeat of what happened last week on the chat facility. There was a bit of tempers on both sides, and a few words thrown around, and, let's try and keep away from that if we can, guys. Right, okay. So the bumper stickers should be in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I still have a bit of a cough, sorry about that. If when they come in, we'll be getting them out 5 for 5 as usual, and we'll start the national campaign to get the word out there. Now, funny enough, I heard during the week that a friend of mine was paying a visit down to a local district, and she said she came across not a bumper sticker, but designed a different way. They must have took the images and designed it themselves and stuck it on one of the retail shop doors in a local area. So we've asked them to pop down and get a photo, because if you have any photos of the stickers that have come across anything with somebody that has a sticker, it'd be great if you take a photo and send it in to us. We're going to build up a listeners photo gallery of photos taken with the OYM bumper sticker on. So if you do come across cars with it on it, take a photo and then send it in to us. It'd be great to see, and where you took it. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, kind of a little stickers on tour kind of a little thing. I mean, even if you don't have a sticker, and if you don't want a sticker, or you're not in a position to buy a sticker, and a five stickers for €5, I mean, who couldn't be? Well, anyway, if you can't, if you even download a graphic off the site and just stick it around, in your locality, and maybe even just take a picture of where you're sticking it, So, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Don't take a picture of where you're sticking it. Okay, sorry, I'm walking myself into something.
Yeah, be very careful. By the way, just a quick mention that the UWS player is not working on the site, but obviously the OYM player is working so fine. So you can click on that, or click on the TNS player, and you'll hear us on that as well.
So anyone listening on the UWS player is now sitting there wondering what's wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway. We have a couple of little announcements to make. You're probably going to be aware of most of them. But the Pope resigned this week. 85 years of age. He's the first Pope in seemingly 600 years to stand down, because he no longer has the strength to carry on. What do you need to be a pope? I mean, as far as I can see, I mean, I could be wrong, I don't know, but he's kind of carried around, do they still use the Pope mobile? I remember when
remember
when the Pope was here in Ireland, and I think it was 1979. He had the bulletproof Pope mobile. So he's carried around in the Pope mobile. He works in the Vatican. You know, I mean, it's kind of, it seems like a job anyone could do.
Well, see, the rumours we heard with the Pope. Now, there's two stories to this. Obviously, one of them we're going to be talking about to Heather regarding Kevin Annett, obviously, and his team of people apparently are taking the credit for getting the Pope to resign. But there is another side to this, which we're also going to be talking about the People's Trust and what's going around the internet at the moment, and the system and the House of Cards apparently falling down. And it's because of these people in the People's Trust challenging the system that we had the resignation of Pope Benedict, who wants to be protected by the Italian government apparently, and they've just been fined something like 23 million, I think, which was on CBS Canada, for money laundering. And also Princess Beatrice of
the Netherlands.
Queen Beatrice. She's stepped down as well, and apparently this was also part of the People's Trust situation. So we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to it. But interesting stuff.
It is. It's very interesting. I mean, I was always under the illusion that, you know, if you were a pope, you had to die in the position. It wasn't like a job where you could kind of go, do you know what, I'm after getting a better offer somewhere else, and I'm handing in me notice.
P45.
Yeah. I mean, you're the Pope. But okay. He's resigned anyway. I mean, was it the story over here that maybe made him resign? Was it another story over there? Was it pressure from some group? Was it pressure from an individual? Was it the thoughts of maybe going to prison for crimes that the church has committed through the years? Who knows? But you know, we at OYM will get to the bottom of it. In our new TVs, we were having a laugh today. I have to tell everyone, we were just kind of having a laugh today. We were talking about different subjects. Myself and Alan, we hooked up this morning, and in our joviality, is that even a word? I don't know. But we were kind of thinking maybe we were kind of thinking big, and you know, in years to come there'll be a show on TV called OYM Investigates.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, that's a theme tune.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
So we get to the bottom of why the Pope has stepped down.
Will we be in silhouette?
Well, no, I can't wear high heels.
No, either can I. Okay, so we won't be in silhouettes. Okay. And the next thing, no, serious. We're reading news out. We have to be serious. Sorry. Okay. There was an issue. I don't know whether anybody went over and listened to UK column. Brian Garish was talking about a Greek man that was trampled to death because there was a big push on for food. The farmers were protesting. They were giving out food. Everybody went to get the food, and the poor man was actually trampled. And what Brian was saying was that this could possibly, and looking to be happening in the UK and Ireland, the shortage of food and everything else that's going on. And of course, we have this, all the jokes going around about horse meat and, you know, Findus, beef, lasagna and everything else flying around. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and that's an isolated incident, but it did happen, and Brian was reporting on it on UK column. So if you pop off the UK column, I think it was the show was either the 6th or the 7th of February on YouTube. You can listen to it. Brian goes into more detail about it and see what you think. Now,
so I think the last time we seen anything like that over here was a sale in pennies.
Yeah. Was it? Okay.
No.
Well, I'll tell you when I seen it. When I was over in the UK, they opened the IKEA store on the North Circular Road in London, and a person was actually killed because they were trampled.
Yeah.
And there was complete uproar over there.
But sure, that's the companies themselves. They create the hype.
No, of course they do, but it's ridiculous, you know. People, you know, going mad. Some of these people queue up for, 12 o'clock at night to be the first to buy a bloody iPhone or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, do you remember that story that was floating around again, or a while ago there was a guy, and he was being interviewed. He was now a celebrity. He had reached celebrity status, and that's what they were saying on this little documentary that I've seen. Has he found a cure for an incurable disease? No. Has he, conquered space, or, done something that was going to be a benefit to mankind? No. Why is he a celebrity? Why is he on the news? Because he's the first person to buy the new iPhone 5. I mean, come on, please.
I mean, talk about dumbing down. And on the chat facility there, somebody said Queen Lizzie gone. I don't know, but she'll probably hand over the reins to
somebody else.
William.
William.
William. And the other thing that's on the list, we hear a lot about whistleblowers in the UK, but there seems to be it seems to be very quiet. But on saying that, we are working on something at the moment which we were contacted about, and that's all we can say at the matter with that. So, we are working on it, hence why me and Steve got together today and we were talking about bits and pieces. So, when we have more sufficient news on that, we'll be able to report on it. But that's all we can say about it.
Cryptic or what?
Very cryptic, very cryptic. But again, it's got to do with whistleblowers. So, Steve.
Yes, indeed. So it also seems the Kells and District Chamber President's Ball will take place on Friday, March the 1st, 2013, in the Kenless Suite of the Headford Arms Hotel. There will be, seemingly, a champagne reception at 7:30 in the PM, sharp, followed by a 4-course gourmet meal featuring the best of local and seasonal produce and some wine. There will also be live music with the Corrupted playing until I've never heard of them. Anyway,
I think that's the government that's in now at the moment. The Corrupted, is it?
Oh, is it?
They have a band, I think.
Wow. Okay. Well, they're going to be playing until late.
No, they don't. They're Corrupted anyway. Go on.
So you have to put me off.
Sorry.
Now. Please, be serious. They're going to be playing until late, followed by a DJ set. Presentations of Lifetime Achievement and Community Spirit Awards will take place on the night. Our guest of honour is on Taoiseach, Mr. Enda Kenny. Tickets are priced at €65 each, and it's a black tie event. For information and bookings, tickets are limited.
Limited.
Well, tickets are limited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, Mr. Kenny, if he does turn up, because they're notorious for not turning up, as we know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So if Mr. Kenny does turn up, that's on the Friday the 1st of March in the Headford Arms Hotel in Kells, County Meath.
Yeah. Going to see if we can maybe pop down there and give him a welcome.
Egg him on a bit.
Well, no, we wouldn't. No. We wouldn't
egg him on.
No, come on, please. Okay. We're above that.
We are.
We'd probably shout, "Hey, fatso," and run away. I don't know. But yeah, that's the place to be if you're anywhere in the location or the locality or the area on Friday, March 1st. The Headford Arms, Mr. Kenny should be there. Then again, as Alan said, he may not turn up. I mean, there was it last year? I think it was. Mr. Gilmore, Mr. Eamon Gilmore was supposed to attend a rally.
A local function.
A local function in relation to Jim Connell. Was it Jim O'Connell?
Jim Connell, yeah.
Yeah. And we got together, we hooked up, we made our way up, just to be there as spectators. And, in support of Mr. Gilmore and his cronies. But alas, Mr. Gilmore decided not to turn up after us, spending the time to get here. But anyway, it doesn't matter.
There you go. So how's your week, Steve?
My week's been fine. I mean, just the usual mix of, checking out the links and having a look at some of the links and some of the information that's going around the internet. I know we're going to be talking about the OPPT, but I was kind of looking at some of that information that you did send out in one of the links, and it's powerful, absolutely powerful information. If it's true, and we've no reason to believe otherwise, it's going to revolutionise the way we think. It's going to revolutionise the world. In fact, if you listen to what some people are saying, it already has revolutionised the world. It's just that we haven't heard about it yet, so therefore we're still playing the game according to the rules that we believe are still in place. But speaking of rules being in place, I just wanted to kind of just throw this out there, just to mention to people, if you have any elderly relatives, or if you happen to be elderly yourself, please be aware that over here in Ireland there are some people going around, and my own father fell victim to this during the week, knocking on doors and trying to convince you that you have a problem with your roof. This happened in Dublin, Northside Dublin. And my father some guys knocked at the door and convinced him there was a problem with his roof and that they could fix it, and they kind of put the fear of God into him, saying that if it wasn't done, the roof would cave in, and they actually put the fear of God into the man. So he told him to go ahead and do the job, and thank you very much for saving the life, his own life and the family, blah blah blah. Then they hounded him to go down to the bank. You going to the bank? You heading to the bank? Yeah. And But anyway, between the jigs and the reels, as the fella says, he paid the money, not kind of sure what he got done, but he paid a substantial amount of money to get it done. I haven't seen it yet, but it was a classic case of, we're in the area, we could do it for you today. You know, so you don't even have 24 hours to think about it because we're in the area today. And he was kind of put on the spot. So, you know, if you are elderly or you have an elderly relative, I think just throw a word of caution to them that this is still going on. I know it often gets highlighted on Watchdog in the UK, but it is starting to happen here again. I know it did happen many, many moons ago, but it's kind of happening again. So even if you just say to an elderly relative, if anyone comes, you know, promising sun, moon and stars, or, you know, promising doom and gloom if you don't get your roof fixed, or your windows or whatever, just get them to give you a ring, or someone who they trust a ring, and, you know, just kind of put it to them first, because I think there are people, and they are going around and they are ripping people off, and I'm only saying it, as I say, because my father fell victim to them during the week. And that's all I have to say.
Cool.
How's your week?
Just a couple of things as usual, just that we're going to catch up on. There was a funny thing going around on Facebook during the week, which I thought was very good, quite appropriate for me and you, Steve. It said there was a picture of a guy breaking into a house, and it says, if a robber broke into my house to search for money, I'd just laugh and search with him.
Yeah, ain't that the truth?
Yeah, and we know that feeling.
Did you see the other picture? Actually, there's another beautiful picture going around the internet at the moment, and it's a guy in a bank, and he has a gun up to the teller, and he's saying this is a robbery. And then there's a picture of, like, the bank manager. He's walking past with a bag of cash, and the little caption of the obviously the bank manager. He's just saying amateur.
Yeah, I didn't agree with that one. Now, people who have Gmail, Google Mail, you might find that some of the emails that we send out with links are going into your junk mail folder. Just to be aware that Gmail, for some reason, I don't know why, seems to put our emails in junk, and I wouldn't like to think that our emails are that bad. But if you have a Gmail account, just check your junk mail folder. If you're not receiving emails from us, they could be in there. Now, something that was posted on Facebook, and we can't verify this, so if anybody knows any information on this, please let us know. So we're going to say allegedly, because we don't know, but it was posted up on Facebook. And they're wondering why the junk press, or the mainstream press, otherwise known as junk press, that they're not talking about Enda Kenny's nephew in the news. He was caught out of his head on drugs in a robbed car. Hasn't been to school, never sat exams. He's been in court from the age of 14. He got 7 months the other day, and obviously he's still going to be guaranteed a place in Trinity when he gets out. If it was a kid from any inner city location, it would be a whole topic of the show. And this was put on FM 104 radio station. That was on their Facebook page apparently. Now, it's saying allegedly because I don't know how true that is. But obviously this person seems to know a little bit about it and put it up on the FM 104 Facebook page, and they were saying that he hopes that they don't delete it. So they're just wondering why the radio station wasn't posting it. So if anybody can confirm if that's the case, let us know. We'd like to know whether that is the case. And the last thing on the list, which is what Steve said earlier on, was the OPPT, which is the People's Trust. And there's a video out there called OPPT, The End of Financial Tyranny. And if what they're saying, there's a lady who's called Heather, who's involved with this trust, and the group of trustees who they set up this group of trustees to challenge the system, and apparently she put up her own house to test the system because she wanted to find out how corrupt the system was. She had to go back to source. So she did this, and she won the case, and apparently it's using the system against the system. So they can't ignore it because it's their system. So apparently this has been rolling out, and what they're doing is they're working on templates now to give the people, so people can use the templates to approach any situation, because apparently all loans and debts are null and void because the way the system is. And the other thing she said, that everybody on the planet has or is owed the value of 500 million.
Happy days.
Happy days. So
what are you going to spend yours on? Mine's already gone.
Yeah. So So it's quite interesting if you listen to the whole interview that she did with the on the internet. I think it was 2 hours and something. But there's other websites out there, YouTube websites, talking about the People's Trust. And if this is in play now at the moment, we have to kind of educate everybody. But if it's true, and we have to say if it's true, because, we've been let down on a number of occasions, with information coming out, and then it's just like falling flat on its face, then, happy days. And if it's because of them that the Pope has resigned and Queen Beatrice has resigned, and we'll notice other people resigning, all the rats leaving the ship before it sinks, then obviously it's in place. Now apparently this lady has talked to some elderly Chinese person and the Rockefellers. She was invited to talk to the Rockefellers because they're concerned. And the Bush cabal, Donald Rumsfeld, and a few of the other cabal people have been, involved in this because they don't want to give up control, obviously. But apparently everything's null and void with this People's Trust. I just hope it's not smoke and mirrors again. But you have to make up your own mind. So pop along to YouTube later on and type in OPPT, the end of financial tyranny. And you should hear an interview with Santos Bonacci and a few other people. And I said there's other video, there's other Heather, I forget her name, I forgot her last name. But she did a big interview for about two and a half hours, which I listened to, which was very interesting. So I recommend listening to that. Okay, without further ado, we said earlier on, our guest tonight is a lady called Heather Martin, who has started a Stop Kevin Annett campaign. So we wanted to give Heather a bit more time to talk about the campaign and what's going on. So we'll just say good evening to Heather. How are you, Heather?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Not too bad.
Very good, thank you.
Good.
Excuse me, Heather. Sorry, I have this cough which is just hanging on. Must be them bloody chemtrails again.
Must be.
Loads of chemtrails. Right, okay, Heather. Before we actually get into the campaign, just as a kind of reminder, tell us a bit about why you're involved with this and why you got involved with it.
Oh, wow. It seems like it's been a really long journey, so I kind of have to think back. Essentially, I was starting to get involved with some local activists, and we were thinking about putting together film festivals. So one of the films that we had kind of discussed about airing was Kevin Annett's film Unrepentant. And I'd never actually seen the film, but because it dealt with a Canadian issue and First Nations issues, I thought this would be great. We have a large Aboriginal community in Saskatchewan. It would be a real eye-opener. It's a obviously an important issue. And I didn't know how much people knew about residential schools and the fallout from people who had been, as children, taken from their families and placed into these schools. And so as I was preparing to, show some of these films, someone had sent me some information saying, you better check into the Circle of Justice. And so I'd never heard of Circle of Justice, so I did, a bunch of Googling and looked at the links that this person had sent me, and basically this was a letter that was drafted by people who were involved in something called the Circle of Justice, which was a group of Aboriginal people who had come together to try and raise awareness about the residential schools in Canada, the history of them, and some of the atrocities that had happened in those schools. And Kevin Annett was one of the people who was involved with the Circle of Justice. And the letter basically states that the group of people who had formed this Circle of Justice were very upset with Kevin about how he had handled witness testimonies and how he had used some of these testimonies without people's permission, and that they wanted to sort of reconcile this with him. And he had the opportunity apparently to talk with them and fix the situation, but that never happened. So this was a letter that was published back in 1998, but still, was an important issue, I felt, because this was a situation where somebody who was doing research for the purpose of writing a book and making a film was using the testimony without the permission of the people he was interviewing. And so I contacted Kevin and Annett and expressed some of these concerns, and in the process of doing some more research into him, noticed that he was creating something called the ITCCS, and I wanted to know what that was about, and I asked him, is there anybody else who is involved in this tribunal? Like, so far all I can find is your name all over everything. And I said, it's probably not the best idea if you are the only person listed, because that puts a rather big target on your back. You're going after some pretty big people, and it makes it very easy to pick you off. I was kind of rooting, for him at that point. But I wanted to know, where was this office in Brussels, and just how widespread was this network of his, and basically I didn't get any response. Any of the questions that I asked him, he basically diverted the attention to people who were involved in what he called a smear campaign against him, and some of these people were First Nations women who were activists, and very well-known activists in their communities and across Canada. And he was labeling them black operatives and paid agents of the state, and these were women elders, of various nations who were doing great things and involved in some very high-profile activities. So it basically spurred me on, once I started meeting other bloggers who also were writing kind of eye-opening investigative pieces about Kevin, to start asking my own questions in the form of a blog. And so I started the blog, Kevin and Annett Must Be Stopped, and I titled it that because I felt that the appropriation of First Nations people's voices by a white man who was, a minister in a church, I thought was basically a re-victimization of people who had already suffered in the residential school system. And so the blog's been running ever since, I think, July of last year, and on my stats counter, I think I've got about over 20,000 visitors to the site so far. So
wow,
that's where we're today. Mm-hmm.
Right, okay. And I was just going to say, how's the feedback from what you're doing? Because obviously we see both sides of the fence, and you have the people who support Kevin and the people who obviously support you, and it's just curious that if what you're saying and Kevin's kind of coming out and saying things that are not correct, why do these people still support Kevin? Why don't they go off and check the information themselves? I mean, do you feel there's a reason why they don't do that? Are they brainwashed or something?
Well, I think I'll address your first question about the kind of feedback that I've gotten. And I've gotten kind of two kinds of feedback. A few people, I would say probably maybe 10 to 12 people have spent quite a bit of time posting really negative, bordering on death threat kind of hostility towards me and towards other bloggers who I've mentioned in the course of my own writing. And that really kind of threw me for a loop, the fact that, people not just in Canada but across the U.S. and even in Ireland were exerting quite a bit of effort to try and discredit me, try and spread lies about me, try and intimidate me for what I was writing about. They didn't want to really engage in a topic discussion, a debate about the issue. They didn't want to counteract what I was saying about Kevin. They wanted to attack me personally. And so it was a little disconcerting because I don't have that experience. That's something completely new. And what I've learned through the course of this writing experience is that people have a very tight grip on the paradigms that they hold on to dearly to, their worldview.
Well, the belief system. They have a belief system which we've talked about before.
Right.
People have this belief system, and when you actually challenge their belief system, their ego doesn't allow them to actually be open-minded and say, well, okay, I'll have a look at what you're talking about and make an informed decision. They just defend it to the hilt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's a lot of recently awakened people. People who started watching David Icke and David Wilcox and all these people going, oh my gosh, the world isn't as I thought it was, and so now the pendulum sort of swings all the way to the other extreme, where everything is a conspiracy theory. Everybody is evil, and if you try and challenge some of the things that they hold on to, they're like a rabid dog. They won't let it go. And so it makes it really hard to have a constructive debate when there's people who are very invested in their own opinions about things. One of the other questions that I continually ask people that I knew, even some people who knew Kevin and still know Kevin today, is, do you think he's working for somebody? Like, is this just somebody who has a narcissistic personality who is all about, feeding his own ego, or does he have is there a real agenda and a real purpose to this? And while he's claiming everyone else is a paid agent or a CSIS operative, is he really the agent? Would that be sort of the typical mind control MI6 kind of gameplay that goes on in order to discredit everybody else who's criticizing the man? It's really just taken such a bizarre series of twists and turns with all the things that surround him that's always sort of been a question in the back of my mind. And obviously I can't prove any of that. But the recent developments with the OPPT and his laying claims to having started the ball rolling is just one of those things that it's just another thing to tick off my own sheet of this man places himself in the midst of very heated politically kinds of situations, with people who are in the know, who are in the forefront of all kinds of activist activities, and either he's crazy or he's brilliant, and maybe both. This may be a very strategic effort on his behalf to do what he feels is necessary to, position himself.
Heather, can you just
where he needs to be.
Can you just hang on there for a minute? For some reason, our server has gone offline, and the TNS people will be listening to us, okay? But the stream has gone down on the OYM stream. So what I'm doing is we're just going to start off, and we're just going to try and kick off the player again. For some reason, it tends to...
Okay, we're back.
Are we back up?
Yeah.
Okay. Very strange that, it does that now and again. It must be the gremlins in the system, would you say, Steve?
I'd say Heather's touching a nerve, and it's someone's people trying to hack into the system.
Yeah, I think you're upsetting somebody there.
See,
Heather.
we did have a comment on the chat box there, so just saying that Kevin Annett is actually live on another station at the moment, and one of the posters on our chat thing said he'd like to get the number and ring in to the other show, so... We never know. We might get Kevin ringing in.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he wants to ring in, I mean, he's allowed to have his opinion, as you have. And one of the things that, while I remember, Heather, that I remember Kevin said, and I'm being a bit probably devil's advocate here to a certain extent, but then that's just part and parcel of it. I mean, we can't express our opinion either way, really, but we just want to present the information to the listeners and let them make up their own mind. But one of the things Kevin did say when he was on the show was that. Because there was systemic abuse in the native peoples over in America or in Canada, he said they're trying to cover up. So by you attacking him, that's one way of covering up what actually went on inside the actual communities themselves. What's your take on that?
I think that's a simplified explanation for it. I think that a lot of people don't know the history of the residential schools because they've never gone looking for the history. And Kevin has done, to his credit, he has brought exposure of the issue to people. However, he's not the first person to ever write about it, to try and bring it to the public fore. If you were to go to a university library and go and search, what Aboriginal people in political science, in social sciences have written about the residential school system and what happened there, you'll find stacks and stacks of literature and journal articles written by people who were there, who are part of those communities. So Kevin is not the first person to make this an issue. However, he's the first person to really inflame the issue, and that's where I guess for me personally, I've had a problem with that, with what Kevin's been doing, because he really doesn't have to lie about what happened. He could just tell the straight facts. But what Kevin likes to do is he likes to embellish. He likes to make himself look better, bigger, wiser, smarter than he needs to. It's usually a very small thing that he just sort of slips in there so that the average person doesn't really know. It's totally unnecessary, given the merit of the issue itself. And the question is, why does he need to do that? Well, he does that because he generates a certain kind of sympathy among supporters that is a little bit more angry. They're not looking for reconciliation in the kind of, calm, quiet, we want healing within ourselves kind of way. He's looking for the angry outburst from the activists who want to raise their fists in the air. And you have to wonder, why is that? And when you look at who Kevin positions himself with over the course of the last 20 years, with the first tribunal that happened in Vancouver in 1998, it was everybody who was anybody within Native communities. Top activists were involved. Amnesty International was there, and then there's Kevin. And it's like, gee, you've got all these fairly famous American Indian movement people there. You've got people who are supporting Leonard Peltier's defense fund there. You've got, all these people. Jim Craven, who, is a professor of sociology and economics, and he's fairly well known. So you've got all these, people there, and he's in the middle of it all. And it's like, well, who's Kevin to be in the midst of this? And then you see him sort of transition from that to placing himself in the middle of Occupy movement, both in Toronto and in Vancouver, and in with the International Socialists, and in with the people in Ireland who are speaking out about pedophilia in the churches there, and in New York, and and he's going everywhere. He's now traveling around the world, going to Italy, and drumming up business, and so it's one of those things that he has made it a stage show almost, not where it's about the issue. Because if you look at where we're at today, it's no longer about Aboriginal people. He's no longer crusading for 50,000 dead children who are buried at residential school grounds. He's forgotten all about them. Now he's moved on to the Pope. He's got bigger and better things. And judging from the amount of hits on my website and other bloggers' websites and his own website, he's got thousands, well over 10,000 likes on his postings in the last week. So what does that tell you? Whereas before, when it was about Native people, Native kids, and bringing justice to them, It was, 45, really, really small numbers of support. Now this is a game changer. This whole thing with the Pope is either going to propel him to beyond Drake and David Icke kind of status, or he's going to screw it up and it's going to be the end of him.
Do you think,
where can you go after that?
Do you think he's on an ego trip?
From what I read from him, I do sense a large ego, a very narcissistic personality who, he really revels in his image as
The Savior.
The Savior and he talks about his history, his family's history. One of his great-great-great-great-grandfathers was Peter Annett, who was sort of the forefather of the free-thinking movement in Europe. He was the guy that all the other freethinkers and, Reformationists read and wrote after. So he really holds on to that idea of being a rebel within the church, and he still calls himself Reverend, even though he also, in the same sentence will say about how the United Church fired him and how much he despises his treatment from the church. So there's sort of this dialectic that goes on with him where he paints himself as being very pious and yet doesn't speak like a pious man in a lot of his writings. There's a lot of an undertone of anger there that just doesn't reconcile well with somebody who's trying to paint themselves as this calm, eagle strong voice kind of guy.
Yeah. Well, see, if he's calling himself a reverend and he's kind of being defrocked, for want of a better word, well then technically he can't be doing that. So, alarm bells ring for me if somebody is calling themselves something they're not. Like, if you are, in a professional qualification, a solicitor, and you've been debarred, if you're a doctor and you've been struck off the register, you can't call yourself a doctor because technically you're not.
Well, if I could just maybe add to that, I mean, we do know a doctor who raised a sensitive subject and he was struck off, but he still done his training and became a doctor.
I know.
I mean, so whether someone says you can't use the title anymore, if you've done the training, you've earned the title, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's the argument too, is that he claims, and I don't know this for sure because obviously I'm not in Vancouver. So, but people say that he still ministers to the people, in Vancouver and to those friendships and those relationships with people that he made, 20 years ago. So, yeah, I agree with that point. The United Church has come out and said in their decision that he was not allowed to use his affiliation with the United Church. So, he can still say that he's a minister to the people. You're ministering to the people, so why not use the word minister? And yet, he's not claiming that he's still, a minister of the United Church. So he's not using the United Church to do any of his work. So, that's really for me neither here nor there. The fact that whether he was fired or whether he quit, I mean, it's one of those things that it says that in the BC panel decision that he was let go because he refused to submit to a psychiatric evaluation and for retraining and supervising of his duties, and that he refused to, address some of those issues. So, those people who were in that room are the only people who really know what went on, and that really wasn't the focus of what I was trying to bring up. My biggest issue had to do with his dig at Bradford in Ontario, at the residential school there, and what he was claiming was found there, and sort of the subsequent tales he was telling around that.
Okay. Just a comment on the chat facility here. Somebody said that the host seems to be siding with yourself. Well, I'm not taking sides either way, because there's two arguments to every issue, and I'm asking the relevant questions to find out what your campaign is about, and about why you're against Kevin. I'm not, as I say, we try and do our best to sit in the fence, Steve, don't we?
Splinters and all, yeah.
Splinters and all, and so there's no taking sides here. Just if people are wondering, we're just asking the questions and putting it out there. So you reckon that obviously he's moved on to bigger, better things now. He's taken on the Pope. I mean, I've seen the ITCCS.org website mentioned in a few places, and even in the alternative media on some websites. Obviously, his information has appeared up on their websites as well. So either he is genuine, or he's a very, very good conman.
Well, that's really the question, isn't it? Apparently on February the 1st, ITCCS contacted this unnamed European government and stated their intention to have the Pope arrested. On the 4th of February was when somehow the Vatican was notified that there was an impending arrest. This is according to Kevin and to other websites that are passing this story along. So on the 4th of February, the Vatican was made aware that Ratzinger was likely to be arrested, and then the resignation happened on the 14th of February. So the claim has been that it is because ITCCS went to this unnamed European government and basically made a deal with them that this whole ball has been rolling. So will we ever know that for sure? No, because we have just Kevin's word that was the arrangement made. So,
well, also we have this People's Trust, who they're saying that because of what they're doing, the Pope and Queen Beatrice has stepped down. So they might argue the point and say, well, it's because of what we're doing, not what Kevin did.
Right, and Kevin actually sent a letter to Heather, and you'll forgive me, I can't remember, it's Letruc or something like that, who is the Heather you were mentioning earlier in the show. And I'll say asked, I don't know if it was asked or demanded, that the assets seized from the Vatican be dispersed to ITCCS directly. And according to a source who I can't give too much detail yet because the person is wanting to do some more fact checking, but preliminary information that I'm getting is that she essentially and the rest of them at OPPT said, no, we're not dispersing any funds to you, they belong to the people. So somehow Kevin thinks that this is my impression, that he feels entitled to the assets from the Vatican.
Well,
I think someone in the Canadian military has the information that Kevin had sent to them, asking for this money. So
I think we all feel entitled with to the money that's in the Vatican, because the church is a fantastic place where it pleads poverty, but it's probably one of the richest religions in the world. But that's going down a different rabbit hole, which we don't want to go down. So, with your campaign, what you're doing now, you've got your website up and running, and you're obviously, educating and promoting people. Are you doing more radio interviews? Who else is involved with you doing this?
Basically, it's me doing the blog by myself. I do keep in touch with other bloggers, and kind of compare notes, because as we're sort of spread out across the country and across the world, we get different bits of information, so we can kind of compare notes and say, well, what did you hear? Well, I heard this, and we share links and that sort of thing, and every once in a while put our heads together to see what's going on. But, each of us writes independently. We each have our own, reason for writing and are writing on various other things. So it's pretty much just me. Now, one thing I can say is that I've been able to get to know some of the people who were involved with Kevin directly, such as Lydia and Rice Whitecalf. And to just update your listeners, the Whitecalfs were part of that original tribunal that happened in Vancouver back in 1998. And basically they live in South Dakota, and Lydia was a supporter of Kevin's for over 10 years, was part of the delegation that went over to England and to Italy in 2008, I believe, and then again in 2010. And so I've gotten to hear her story and hear all the stuff that happened, why she suddenly decided to no longer support Kevin, and sort of the backlash from all of that. So gotten to know her and a few other women who are also supporters of Kevin, who no longer support him and who just at this point are not willing to come forward in any kind of public capacity. So at this point it's just a couple of the bloggers like myself who are trying to get the information out there and just to get people to think, do the research themselves, provide some links and stimulate some critical thinking.
Okay. Well, I think we'll go off to questions, Steve, if you have a few questions there for Heather.
There's a lot of controversy going on both of the chat forums, on our own and also on the TNS one. But I'll just read out. There's kind of a comment and then a question. And the comment and the question, it basically sums up pretty much everything that's kind of going back and forward on both chat boxes. But the comment is whether this woman, they're referring to you, Heather, believes the overwhelming evidence available suggests that Kevin Annett's work is honourable and he has no other agenda than serving the church and state with prosecution for their role in horrendous crimes. His life, they're obviously referring to Kevin, has been threatened, he's been assaulted and his character smeared. And the question at the end of that is, can you please ask Heather to summarise what harm, if any, Kevin is currently doing? And I'm guessing that's obviously by exposing what he's exposing.
Okay. That's actually a question I get a lot, and I hear that from a lot of his supporters, and I totally understand where that question's coming from. I'll just preface it to say that it is understandable that people who see the end result, which is bringing down the Pope and the Queen and Stephen Harper and anybody else who they view as being an enemy of the common man, it's totally understandable that would be, you would be rooting for someone like Kevin. Absolutely. I was rooting for Kevin. A lot of Kevin's supporters were rooting for Kevin. The problem that I have seen is that if you lie about the little things and the big things, I mean, he's lied about a lot of little things, but he's also lied about some big things. The thing that really disturbed me the most was an interview, a radio show that he did where he talked, his dad was on and Russ Leitica was on and Marsha Lane was on, and they were talking about this upcoming dig at Brantford. And his dad, Bill Annett, said 3 different times, he said, now Kevin, something as big as this dig, where we are digging for the remains of children, this is an important thing. You don't want to screw it up. You want to make sure that you dot your I's and you cross your T's, and you make sure you have a certified forensic anthropologist there for every step of the way, because once you disturb that site, you've disturbed the evidence, and you've got to maintain the integrity of the evidence. Then he shows up at Occupy Toronto, and he pulls out 2 large bones out of his coat pocket and waves them in the air and says, "These are the bones of dead children unearthed at Brantford." Now, if I was a mother, a grandmother, an auntie of a child who had died there and was buried there in an unmarked grave, and somebody pulled my kid's bones out of his pocket and waved them around at a political rally, I'd be furious. I would be saying, "You have no right. How dare you speak that way? How dare you disrespect the dead in that way?" And in the same breath, he will hold up a banner saying that there needs to be justice for 50,000 dead children. And my point is that justice for one child begins when you decide not to take bones out of your pocket and wave them around in front of a bunch of political activists for no other reason than to propel yourself into the public eye. So it wasn't about justice for those dead kids. It was about making himself look like a crusader so he could get support. And to me, that negates any of the quote-unquote good things that he has done for the movement. He releases this long timeline of things that have happened to him over the course of the last 20 years. And one of the things that he describes in quite a bit of detail is the involvement of RCMP officers, nurses, and doctors in the deaths of Aboriginal people, and the complicity of RCMP officers in the disappearance and murders of Aboriginal women at the Picton farm. Now, if you're not aware of the Picton murder case, it's one of the worst mass murder cases involving Aboriginal women and prostitutes from the downtown east side in Vancouver in Canada's history. It's horrible, horrible. They basically, it's like watching Hannibal Lecter's movie. They took women there and they raped them, they murdered them, they cut them up, and they fed them to the pigs. It was horrible and disgusting. And it's a black mark on Canadian history, the fact that the idea that RCMP officers would have been involved in that. And the problem with what Kevin wrote is that he published the names and addresses of eyewitnesses who named individual RCMP officers and other prominent individuals. He gave their addresses out publicly on the internet and then refused to cooperate with the RCMP officer to try and help the investigation. And so when people say to me, "Yeah, but he's fighting a good cause," my thinking is that what he does in his actions hurts so much of the causes he claims to be fighting for. And so while people just see the idea that, hey, he posted something that said, we're concerned about missing Aboriginal women and the murders of Aboriginal women along the Highway of Tears, I'm like, well, then I guess you shouldn't be publishing the names of eyewitnesses when some of those women go missing and end up murdered, because that creates an atmosphere of silence. Now you have where nobody in Vancouver wants to talk about what's going on there, because if you're going to give witness names out, who would put their life at risk like that? Certainly not someone who's an IV drug user who's living on the street. They're having a hard enough time. And for First Nations people in this province in particular, we have a huge First Nations population living in absolutely terrible conditions in the inner cities. They call it the hood, and it really is. You don't go down 20th Street in Saskatoon after dark. there is so much that needs to be done to repair the intergenerational effects of the residential schools. And being angry and creating drama is not helping those people one bit. There's still a problem that needs to be solved in this country. And it's not going to be done by waving bones around at Occupy movements. It takes people on the ground interacting with First Nations people in the communities that they live in and providing them with some hope. Not anger, but hope. Because they need to see that there is a way out. And right now what Kevin is propagating is anger. Anger at the system. And that's not how these people are going to fix their lives. And that's the problem that I see with it. And that's just my opinion. And I understand where other people are coming from. They see it differently, and I understand that.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I have to give credit to Kevin for is... Oh.
Sorry.
That's Star Wars in the background. Here comes Han Solo.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. She's a Star Wars fan.
Oh yes.
I was just going to say that's not a ringtone befitting a lady.
Yes. She's tells it's Star Wars fan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little quirky.
That's okay. We all are. What I was going to say was what Kevin has kind of put on the map for me. Before we even knew about Kevin, I heard about this information about the genocide in Canada with the kids and everything else. And obviously then Kevin was attached to that. But he was the person that kind of woke me up to the fact that happened in Canada. Otherwise I probably wouldn't have known about it. So we have to give him some credit somewhere on, putting this information on the map. Maybe he started off with a good heart with this, and maybe the ego has taken over, and now he's, becoming, as you say, he's using it as a stepping stone, because kind of that's what happens. Sometimes the ego is very powerful, and maybe he started off for good reasons, and then he's seen that how involved people are getting involved in, and they were saying, well, Kevin, you're doing a great job and everything else, and here's a donation and everything else. And before you know it, it's actually, taking him over. And he just has to feed the ego by going for bigger and bigger and bigger. And maybe the Pope thing is, that's going to be the biggest, I think, at the moment. But, I have to give him credit in the fact that I wouldn't have known anything about, and Steve wouldn't have known anything about the genocide, only for he actually exposed it.
Well, I would kind of disagree with that, because the initial exposure came with the first tribunal, where there were very few white people even present, and it was through the witness testimony of the Aboriginal people who were there. It was kind of like a dry run of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It was through their testimonies, which later got published on a website that Kevin was loosely affiliated with, but was not running himself, that actually started that whole movement. And then Kevin wanted to do his own thing with that information, and that's when he made the movie, and that's when he wrote the book. And that's when the problem with the Circle of Justice came about, is because with that tribunal could have been the kind of movement that was First Nations driven. It had the potential to be its own grassroots movement, except for the fact that Kevin took all those stories and published a book and a movie out of it, and basically deflated the work of Circle of Justice. So he took the air out of it, essentially, so that it just never got off the ground. So the problem is it's easy to say, yeah, he brought it to light, but I think it's kind of circumstantial that he happened to be the person who kind of shut everybody else out so that he could be the light. So, I think if people also understand, too, that First Nations people, in this country at least, from my personal experience, they're very quiet, they're very private people. They don't go telling people their pain. They basically put on a happy face, even though they're suffering and they're poor and they're, maybe drug addicts and alcoholics and sick with diabetes. They put on a happy face and they tough it out because they've known hardship their whole life, probably several generations of hardship, and that's just who they are. They're not ones to go tromping around saying, poor me, look at me, this was my upbringing. They keep those things very close to their hearts, and so, Kevin was part of bringing that to light in the way that it came to light. But to say that it never would have seen the light of day without him, I think does a disservice to the hard work of the First Nations people in Canada and elsewhere, who were really trying to start something before Kevin came along.
I mean, the fact that we had Royce and Lydia on the show before with you, and they were quite adamant, and they were from obviously the native people, and they were not supporting Kevin in what he was doing, has to say an awful lot about that anyway. Because if you're trying to, you have to, it's a bit of a kind of, you have to query that, because if what you're trying to expose, the people who have been hurt by what happened, are saying, we don't want you to represent us, you have to ask yourself, well, why are the people doing that? Now I know we had this thing the last time we were on where I spoke to Lydia and Royce about the euphemism regarding the white man. And, I do think maybe people see, when people, it's very easy to turn around if you're on the other side of the fence and see that as a euphemism if it doesn't bother you or it doesn't affect you. But I think we have to be very, very careful. Like, I'm sure, in times gone past and even now to a certain extent, and I've experienced it, and I'm not having a pop at the English by any means, but when I lived over there, I remember somebody turning around to me, and I know people fondly call the Irish people paddies, but, I do feel that can be a derogatory term in some situations. And when somebody you don't know who's from a different nationality comes up and calls you that, I feel it's a derogatory statement. That's just my own personal opinion. And that happened. And basically, I happened to say to the guy, well, would you get upset if I called you and it rhymes with banker? And and he said, yeah. He said, well, I said, well, I don't know you, so you're using, this person just walked in, he was introduced to me, and the person happened to say that I was from Ireland, and then he turned around and called me Paddy, and I said, well, I find that a very derogatory statement, especially with the fact that I don't even know you. So, so when, the white man, I know you use it as a euphemism, but for some people, that is a derogatory statement. And if you really look back at history, it wasn't the white man. It was the cabal. It was the people at the top of the food chain, if you want to call it that, were causing the problem, as it did in Ireland for 800 years of repression, because Irish people have gone through a hell of a lot. Like the Native American Indians, Irish people have gone through a hell of a lot over the 800 years. So we can sympathise with the Native American people because we've been through it. But we, at the end of the day, we're not going to blame the English, because it wasn't the English, it was the people at the top, the cabal, who are running the show, that was causing the problem. It wasn't the people on the street, they didn't got to do with it, So I think we have to be very careful that, even though Royce and Lydia might see it as a euphemism, it depends who they're pointing it to. I mean, if they want to get support for their campaign, they'd want to stop using that. Now, I know it's probably been used for years, and maybe it's too late now, but it's never too late for change. I would start saying the cabal, or have some other name for the people who actually did it, rather than the white man, because that's very generalised, Steve?
How are you? Yeah, no, just looking at some of the comments there on the TNS one, and Sven says we are assuming Native Indians think the same as us. Now, they may or may not. Maybe they don't call us the white man, but I think this did come up before, and I know it's just words, and sometimes people can take offence to certain words, but I mean, from what I'm kind of seeing going up and down the chat box, perusing both of the chat boxes, it's a case of, okay, Kevin brought stuff to light, and then Kevin ran with that, and Kevin shone a light on it from his kind of the way he shone a light on it, basically the way he wanted it to be seen, and maybe other people are saying no, that's not the way it should be seen. That's not what happened. But I'm wondering, is he guilty of maybe he exposed something and then, as someone said there about pulling the bones out. I mean, obviously pulling bones out, that's shock value. That's great. That works great on TV. I mean, that's fantastic. You shock people into believing you.
Yeah.
Would it be a case of maybe he done that? Maybe it was a stunt. Maybe I mean, I think we know it's not genuine. Sure, it's not. They weren't human bones at all. So I mean, was it a stunt? And then after that, he just had to keep going bigger and better and bigger and better. And maybe that kind of brought him off in one direction. But I mean, at the end of the day, is what he's doing and what Heather's doing, and I mean, are they both trying to expose the same wrongdoings? Maybe they're just doing it differently. Any takers?
Well, what do you think, Heather?
Sorry, I was waiting for you guys.
Okay.
I'm looking at Alan. Alan's looking at the other computer.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. I think that it is a complicated issue, and really it comes down to the prejudices that we have. And I talked to Royce kind of at length about my own prejudices, and I guess I had kind of a confession to make in that. Where I grew up, it was mostly quote-unquote white people. In my school, I think I had one friend who was from East India, and that was it. So it was only once I moved to Saskatchewan back in 1990 that all of a sudden I was in a city where there was just a huge population of First Nations and Métis people. And one of the first things that I ever heard was that phrase "dirty Indians."
Yeah.
And it sticks with you whether you consider yourself, I guess, cultured and above that.
Yeah.
It sticks in your mind because you see a guy who's stumbling down the street. He's drunk. He smells bad. You come up with a whole bunch of negative expressions that stay in your mind. Oh, he's expecting me to take care of him, and he's just there for the handout, and he just wants to get drunk and doesn't take care of his family, and the list just it goes on and on. This conversation you have in your own head, and every time you walk downtown and you see somebody who's obviously Native, you have that instant distaste in your mouth for that person. And that's where, I do give Kevin a lot of credit, is that, he has obviously put himself in the proximity of those people in an attempt to help them. I'm assuming that it's genuine. I hope it's genuine. And I think what this has done is it has forced people to examine their prejudices against people who are not the same color as us, and for some reason we're more willing to accept, the people from the Middle East and Pakistan and India. We're used to breaking down the stereotypes of people from those countries, but we're not ever forced to break down the stereotype of the native, the red man. And they're the ones that were here before we got here. So that's kind of backwards.
Well, I remember hearing the joke where when Christopher Columbus discovered America and he came across the Native American Indians and he said, "What do you call this place?" And they said, "Ours." which is quite appropriate because it is their land until, I think the Native American Indians did get a bad time, because even growing up as kids, when you're watching TV and you had the cowboys and Indians and everybody was rooting for the cowboys, and little did we know at the time what that was all about.
Yeah.
And the conditioning. We were up for the military coming, and the Indians would scalp the white man and everything else. And, if you think back to it now, how wrong were their movies? But that was the conditioning and the programming that we were under. And that's the way it was made out. I think we can get, I think you're right, Heather. I think there are times that even though we are open-minded about things, if you hear somebody saying things enough over and over again, it does kind of eat into you. And one of the things that we have over here in Ireland is that when you are from one part of the country and you move to another part of the country, you would be called a blow-in. And I've heard this on a number of occasions, and it doesn't matter whether you live in the place for 30 years. You'd be still a blow-in. If you haven't been born in it, you're a blow-in. And when you hear the locals saying that all the time, sure, he's a blow-in, it's like, it's a derogatory statement. It's just ridiculous. But that's
you need to get a thicker skin.
No.
You're a blow-in. You are a blow-in.
I know I'm a blow-in. But I'm just making a point. That's what we call it over here.
I'm a blow-in as well.
I know you're a blow-in. And a blow-off on occasion.
Please.
But, so I think in every country they probably have their own euphemisms for themselves. Internally, because you notice that when you go abroad, I don't know about you, but in Ireland, you could be from a county, you could be from Dublin, Cork, Kerry, whatever. But when you go over and go to a different country, you're an Irishman. You're not a person from Cork, Kerry, or whatever. You're an Irishman, and that's the way. But it's been like that for years. It really has been like that for years, and maybe each country has its own methods of dealing with people from, even in the UK you have the Northerners against the Southerners, and it goes on and on and on, and divide and conquer has always been the approach of the cabal anyway. So if we can kind of move away from that divide and conquer attitude and see people for what they are, human beings, then I think life is going to be a lot better. But unfortunately, some people will never change their ways.
I agree, and I think Canada in particular has kind of is criticized for having an identity crisis. We're not patriotic enough. Americans are very patriotic, and pretty much every other country is patriotic, whereas Canada, we kind of tend to poke fun at ourselves and call ourselves, I guess, blow-ins. We laugh at our own quirkiness, we do love hockey. We do eat a lot of maple syrup. But we also drive cars and live in houses, and we don't live in igloos and, have dog sleds that take us to work. There's a lot of misconceptions there. But, when we think about it, Canada is basically a conglomerate of all of the European immigrants that came over, plus, whoever else immigrated at that time. And so for me, I would tend to identify myself more with my Scottish-Irish heritage rather than being a Canadian, because, that's who my grandparents were Europeans. It doesn't matter that I was born in Canada and I've lived, I'm a third-generation Canadian. It's because of where my great-grandparents came from that's who I really identify with. So I think that's true for a lot of people, except for First Nations people who are very much tied to the land, and this is why we're seeing the Isle No More movement, kind of gaining an upswing, is because they're finally realizing that they have a voice. They're trying to voice their opinion and stand up for their rights, and for the most part, I think people support that, although there's sort of a faction of activists that are trying to co-opt the grassroots movement to kind of make it about their issues. Occupy failed, so we're going to make Idle No More the next Occupy movement. So, it's all about finding out who we are and breaking down the stereotypes of who we think we are and who we think the other guy is. And that's the problem that we're having, is that we don't know the right language to use to kind of start fresh. And, and where Kevin, I think, does really well is when he writes articles that don't sling around that really derogatory euphemisms.
Yeah.
When he just speaks plainly and just says, here's the issues and cuts right to the chase and breaks it down on a factual basis, that's when he writes really well, and that's when I find I resonate quite a bit with him. And when he tends to take on the slurs and the euphemisms, that's when I take issue with him. So.
Now wasn't he removed or sent back from the UK? He was kicked out of the UK at one point. So obviously, I don't know whether that was a PR stunt or that was arranged or that was an actual fact that he was just.
He actually got kicked out, and I think if I remember the situation as it was told to me was that he didn't have the proper visa. He was going to be doing speaking engagements, and he needed a visa in order to do the speaking engagements, and because he didn't have those visas, they just sent him home carte blanche.
Okay. So are you planning to have, I know you said you have different bloggers, but is there no kind of representation from the Native American people regarding what Kevin is doing? I mean, is there not kind of one website that all these people are coming together as a unit and saying, right, okay, this is us, we're all going, and we're not supporting Kevin? It seems to be, Kevin seems to be more organised and your part seems to be more fragmented by the sound of things,
You're right. It is fragmented, and I've been able to talk to First Nations people in Canada here who have nothing nice to say about him. Who, the minute he shows up on Facebook, on certain groups, they're freaking out. They want him off of there, and they're like, if he's going to be on here, I'm leaving this group. And these are sometimes residential school survivor Facebook groups, and he shows up there to post his stuff, and they just will have none of it. They want him gone. But that's not how these people are. They don't find an enemy in Kevin as something that they're going to band together and they're going to speak out about. How they deal with Kevin is basically by ignoring him. And so it's the non-participation that is something that to them means quite a lot. That they're saying, Kevin, we're shunning you. We're turning our back on you by not participating, by not acknowledging you. That means a lot to them. To the rest of us, it's confusing, and it's like a sign of
me,
you don't really care. You're neither here nor there, and it doesn't matter to you one way or the other.
But is that not a sign of acceptance? I mean, the fact that they're not coming out and saying and having their own viewpoint and speaking their mind. I know the point they're trying to make, turning their back and just ignoring. But burying your head in the sand is not going to make it go away. So you have to. I think they do have to take their head out of the sand, and I do think they have to organise between themselves and get together and have a platform where you'll have 1 or 2, 3 representatives speaking. Because I think maybe I might be told by the TNS guys that I'm wrong, but apparently in law, not saying anything is classed as acceptance. So, by saying something means that you disapprove, but just turning your back. Because other people will probably see it. Why, they'll be saying, why aren't the Native American people, if this man is doing this, why aren't they saying something? Why aren't they doing something? So I think that has to be clarified to them. Maybe in their culture, that's what they do. But, Kevin is dealing with the Western culture. And in the Western culture, if you do not do anything, then it's perceived as acceptance. Or it's just that you're burying your head in the sand and you're not doing anything about it.
Well, and look at the residential school history itself. These were kids who were taken, put into residential schools, had their language beaten out of them. Their hair was cut short. They were put in Western clothes. They were completely stripped of their culture. And who were they stripped by their culture by? White reverends. So you have Kevin Annett, right, who shows up as a white reverend who is, again, telling them how to think, what to believe. Do you think maybe there's a psychological barrier there that is keeping them from going against the white reverend because that's what they experienced in the residential schools?
I agree. I think the Irish people can be the same. I think we can be very accepting. We have this attitude, we kind of say, oh, sure, what can you do about it? Well, at the end of the day, if you don't do anything, then you won't be able to have a life and your mortgage, and the banks will be foreclosing on your mortgage, and things will get worse. We have to fight back, and this is what's happening over here in Ireland now. People are fighting back. Now, my query is, obviously somewhere down the line, Kevin was given a Native American name. I know something got to do with voice, right? And obviously, so somewhere down the line, they must have accepted them, and then they pulled the plug. So what happened between, this, because he's a white man and he's coming in, but we'll accept him and we'll give him an Indian name, and he's one of our brothers and stuff, and then all of a sudden the carpet gets pulled. So what happened there?
Well, with the original tribunal that happened in Vancouver, what they discovered through the witness testimony was that there likely was at least 28 residential school grounds that may contain the remains of children. So the people who were testifying were people who, as children, were at the schools, witnessed their little schoolmate pushed down the stairs or beaten to death or electroshocked, and seeing them burying these children in the back of the school ground or in the forested area behind the school. And so from these testimonies, there's theoretically 28 school grounds across Canada that potentially have the remains. Now, Kevin originally theoretically had permission to dig at the Port Alberni School out in British Columbia. However, the person who gave him the permission was not an actual elder of the community, and so when the community found out that this person had given Kevin permission to dig at the school ground, they had something to say about it, and for however that went down, the dig never happened there. So then Kevin went down east to Ontario, where he met with people from Six Nations, the Mohawks there, and developed a relationship with them, found out that they had a ground-penetrating radar, and used the ground-penetrating radar to kind of survey the school grounds. And he got permission from, I think the elder's name is Frank Martin, I could be wrong, to do a preliminary dig. So the preliminary dig was supposed to happen, and then the elders were supposed to be involved with that process, and even though they were there, what happened was the remains that were dug up there was bones and bits of clothing, Kevin has said, and buttons that were found from this small plot. That was all supposed to be analyzed by a forensic anthropologist. And what happened was those remains were shipped out of the province. And so the anthropologist who was there at the site didn't really know where they had been sent to, and when he tried to ask, what happened to them, he was kind of stonewalled. And so some discussion must have happened amongst the elders at Six Nations, because when they had given Kevin his name, it was, with the hope, I think, that he was going to help them exhume the remains of their children and be part of that reclamation process. Instead, what he did is he took the remains, moved them out of province, and then there was a bit of a battle as far as getting some of those remains back. And from what I understand, some of those remains were human, and others were later found to not be human. They were all, I think, thought to be human initially, but only some of them were actually human remains. And those human remains, to my knowledge, are in the possession of Mohawk elders at Six Nation. And they issued a statement saying that basically Kevin had crossed the line, and because he wasn't willing to comply with the wishes of Six Nations, that he wasn't allowed back on the land. It was only when he decided to comply with how they wanted the dig done that they would allow him to come back. So far he hasn't expressed any desire to comply with their wishes, and therefore has not been invited back. Now, in a YouTube video, the elder there, I think, has basically, quote unquote, stripped him of his Mohawk name. But he still likes to use that, so that's part of his signatory when he signs stuff. That's how he signs his name. So.
He signs it. Okay, we have a couple of questions for you there, Steve.
Yeah, I'm probably going to get me tongue-tied on this one, but it's Alan Sovman from the TNS chat sent us in some information. It's information from the ITCCS.org website, and it says that this past week, while on the grounds of the school, researchers, along with Kevin Annett, and that's obviously his name, what was his name there, Annett Shani, whatever, I won't even try, who acts with our approval, have unearthed what they describe as human bones. And then on our own chat here, on the OYM chat, one of our posters, Lawrence, he's just echoed basically what you said, Heather, that the natives did get together and made a YouTube film denouncing Kevin and what he's done. So obviously there's even among themselves, there's people who are obviously for and against them. So I mean, it's probably one of these things that's just going to go round and round and round.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tricky one.
Will it be one of those things that just kind of goes round and round, and eventually it kind of moves off what they're focusing on, and all the fighting is about he's doing this and he shouldn't be doing that, and then they lose sight of the real agenda. Well,
I think at the end of the day, the truth is the truth is the truth. So when people start realizing, I mean, we are all on different roads with knowledge, and there's some people are way down the road from where me and Steve are at the moment, and we're just not at that stage to understand what they're talking about. But then again, we are far down the road to other people, and that could be the same situation. So, the thing at the end of the day is not to have a go with people if they don't get it. If Kevin is doing what you're saying is doing, and people are being taken in by that, well then they just have to get to the stage where, like you did, and you have to realise that there's something going on here, because the truth will always come out eventually. People will cotton on. So I think we have to, be aware of that and respect to each other's path and how far we are down the road, because I think we can be very quick at saying to people, oh no, it's this, that and the other, but unless people are in that headspace or near enough down the road with you that they can appreciate it, then until they get down, because sometimes myself and Steve are in situations where people will tell us something and we kind of will look at it and say, oh, I can't really understand that, I can't really get that. But it's only because maybe that person's further on down the road and they have learned stuff that we haven't learned. And that's why. So we are all on a learning curve through life. So I think Steve is right. I think different people, will wake up and, if Kevin is saying stuff that are lies and not the truth, I think they will probably eventually, hopefully, wake up. Unless, of course, these people are so close to Kevin that they're on the gravy train as well, which they might want to wake up, or they might want to just carry on because they're having a good time. I don't know.
Can I just throw in as well that from Greg on our own chat has just said the guy in the video denouncing Kevin was the same guy who originally gave him approval. So, I mean, that kind of speaks volumes. If it's the same people who are kind of against him now, who were for him in the past, then maybe Kevin has gone off in a different road, as you say, and maybe these people, they're not happy with that.
Yeah.
And what's sort of interesting to note too is that in the initial video where Kevin's talking about here's what we're going to do, and the native elder is Frank Miller. Thanks, Greg. So Frank Miller is giving the announcement that Kevin is going to be doing the dig at Bradford and that they're endorsing Kevin. And sitting next to Frank Miller is a gentleman named Bill Squire. Now, Bill Squire is at Kanata, which is at Bradford as well, which is sort of the original where Canada got its start. And so what ended up happening was Kevin had this relationship with Bill Squire, a friendship, so to speak, where Bill Squire is trying to sort of start this native sovereign movement. And this is where this treaty thing comes, this OPPT comes in, is that there's also a separate treaty being started here, a trust started in Canada, in Calgary, Alberta, which is based on what this Bill Squire is trying to start in Ontario. So there are going to be trusts that are going to be popping up everywhere, not just the OPPT one, but there's also a Sun K Temple one, which is basically what Bill Squire is involved with. And you're going to see various ones popping up all over the place because this is the thing is, let's try and get the Vatican's money now that there's, a lien put on all of these funds. So it's interesting to see that some of these same people have now kind of come full circle and are showing up again only because this trust is in the news.
Well, it's I don't know whether it's in the mainstream news. It's definitely in the alternative news, and everybody's trying to get the word around now. I'd like to see more of this trust if it does what it says on the tin. Now, as I say, this Heather lady said that she put her house up as collateral as a way to test the system to see how deep the rabbit hole goes and how corrupt it is. And she said that she's been successful with this. So it'd be curious. Now, as I say, with the Pope resigning, which has not happened for over 600 years, obviously there's something going on. Now, he's going to stay in the Vatican City to be protected and have immunity, because I think he was talking to the Italian Prime Minister there during the week. Steve?
Yeah, just while you're talking about that, I do have a question here that came in a while ago. I was just waiting for the opportunity, but Shrewd Operator on TNS Chat was wondering, does Heather, have an opinion on the real reasons why the Pope has decided to go now?
Oh gosh, they're all conspiratorial.
We like a good conspiracy theory.
Do you? Okay. I guess if I were to defer to the Book of Revelations, I would say that it's we're sort of looking at the potential ushering in of the one world government, the one world religion, and the one world economy. And I think that, the Pope, like a lot of other politicians in the world, are merely puppets on a string. I don't think he really runs anything. I think he's a figurehead like a lot of other leaders in the world. So I think that when he's told it's time to do something and you're going to sacrifice yourself. You throw yourself on your own petard, and that's it. So that's sort of my conspiratorial mind at work. I don't think it's because of, he's got any kind of repentance for, what's happened with the pedophile rings, and I don't think he's that kind of. I don't think he would take that kind of accountability. I think he's being forced to, and I think he's being told either you do this or there'll be worse consequences. And what those would be, I don't know. If it's money laundering, I don't know. Money laundering seems kind of wimpy, and lots of people, sort of ride out the scandal of money laundering in their big corporations. So I don't know that money laundering would be a big enough thing for him to be asked to quit. But
well, again,
I don't know.
Yeah, there's a number of issues there. I mean, to know what's going on in the background is difficult, all right, because so many people are saying so many different things. The one thing that is, we can accept is the fact that this has never happened in over 600 years. So there must be something going on, and maybe in the next few weeks we'll find out more about what's going on as to whether it's the trust or whether it's what Kevin was doing. But I tell you, we've reached that time of the night, Heather, and thank you very much for coming on the show. It's much appreciated. Enjoyed the chat, again, catching up on what's going on. I think this, as Steve said earlier, is going to be an argument on both sides of the fence. You're going to have people on one side, sticking with Kevin, and obviously people on your side. I do think that you need to be looking at grouping. I think you need to really start getting your independent bloggers and have one central point and have your say and have all the information on it where people can go. Because, the strength in numbers. And I think you need to centralise everything. Because Kevin, his campaign is working very well. Wherever people's opinions might be of Kevin, what he's doing is working. And if as somebody said on our chat facility, he's a one-man campaign, well, he's doing it very well because it's working. So you guys need to do the same thing. You need to start, getting together and start having a central point and platform, and say to the Native American people, look, we know in your culture, turning your back is probably what you do, but in the Western society, they don't see it that way. So,
well, Lawrence McCurry wrote a really interesting article about, how the alternative media really needs to step up and replace the standard media that we're used to in this country. And I think, with blogs like, Gregor Noof has a great blog where he looks at all the aspects of the political arena in this country, unions and, everything. We need more of that, and maybe that's right. Maybe we need to sort of consolidate that into the alternative media.
Yeah.
And sort of give that a little bit better platform to launch from. So I take it on advisement.
Yeah, and make it, as factual as you can. I mean, when people make a claim on something, then what you have to do is look at the evidence. You have to look at the evidence. Like if somebody's saying, I have a pill that makes you 10 years younger, they can say that as much as they want, but you have to look at the evidence and the proof. And if the proof is that it does make you 10 years younger, well, that reinforces what the person's saying. So I think what you're saying, and, Kevin is saying what he's saying, and you need to say what you say, and you need to reinforce it, and reinforce it with the people around you, and with the help of the Native American people, and make a YouTube video, or what you need to, come out and say, this is what we think of it, and get the information out there. I'm not taking sides, and I'm sure Steve won't either. We're just saying that Kevin's campaign seems to be very successful from a Western point of view, because we've learned stuff that we didn't know about because of Kevin. Now, if his motives have changed since we've spoken to him, or since he started, well, we don't know, because we don't know him that well. But from your point of view, I think it'd be good for you to get together, regroup, get together, and start working on a central platform, and get your opinion out there as well, and let people show the evidence, and let people decide. I mean, that's the only way I think you probably will be successful with it. But Steve.
Yeah, I know we're coming to that time, but this has to be the last question. But this one comes in from Vin on TNS chat, and Vin is wondering, Heather, can you ask Heather to spell out exactly what she wants to achieve?
Well, initially, I wanted Kevin to first of all, I guess, apologize in some format to Aboriginal people in this country for, I guess, making promises that he couldn't come through on. He promised that he was going to bring the remains of dead children home to their families, and that's never happened. I've got personal things that I would appreciate hearing from him about, but I'm not expecting to hear anything, like where the email is from Smithsonian Institution. I'm never ever going to see that. So I've kind of abandoned that, and to be honest with you, Vin, I'm at a point where I'm kind of reevaluating the purpose of the blog and how much longer the blog itself will stay intact, because that now that Kevin has shifted his focus away from First Nations people, and now that my focus in my own career is focusing more on the health and welfare of First Nations people, I'm kind of feeling like I'm achieving more by what I'm doing in my day-to-day life than what I do on the blog.
Yeah.
I still love to write. I still think that there's angles that, there's ways that I look at things that I sometimes think no one else sees the world quite like I do. So I'm always going to write, and I might just shift to another blog and shift the focus away from Kevin specifically and more to generally what's happening in the world. So as far as what I've accomplished, I don't think I've accomplished anything specifically with Kevin. I don't think I actually managed to stop Kevin and Annett. Kevin is still a force to be reckoned with. And, my hope and prayer is that with what he's doing in the future, that nobody gets hurt. That's what I'm hopeful of.
Okay.
But I'm still keeping my eye on him. So.
Okay. Well, we'll probably do an update down the line and catch up with what's happening and what's going on. But for the time being, Heather, thanks a lot for coming on. Steve, you want to do the honours there?
Yeah. Good information, Heather. Just in closing, can you give us your blog or your website where people can maybe pop along after the show and find out some more about your work and what you're up to at the moment in relation to this campaign?
Sure. The blog is called Kevin and Annett Must Be Stopped, so you can Google that if that's easiest for you. Or you can go www.stopkevinannett.wordpress.com.
Brilliant stuff.
All right.
Excellent stuff. Right, okay, we're just going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMIreland.com, TNSradio.me.com, and ICRadioNetwork.com.
And we're back, and that was Alan Carna and his Sick of These Wolves. That's from his album we featured here on the show last week. A good friend of the show. And I think the name of that album is Providence. I've actually listened to it several times in the car, and it's a nice little piece of work. So it is. So fair dues and fair play to Alan Carna. Yeah,
I mean, that topic with Kevin and obviously Heather, it's a hot potato because there's so many people on both sides of the fence talking about the subject and, disagreeing with each other. So it's a bit like politics and religion, isn't it, really?
It is.
You'll never win.
No, you won't. I mean, it's like when we had the break there, just as we were thanking her for coming on and giving us 2 hours out of her day to come on and discuss it, we just mentioned that there was a lot going on both of the chat facilities. There was, I will admit, there was a lot more links flying around on the TNS one, and thanks very much to Alan Sovman on the TNS and everyone else who threw up some links and information. Have them all noted down here, and as I did mention there, we will get to them during the week, and we will have a look at what we can. But it did seem like it was a hot topic. I mean, I can only assume that both parties are doing what they believe is the right thing to do. They're each one is taking the course of action that they think is correct. And obviously, you're going to have people. So I suppose like a football game, you're going to have supporters from both sides. I mean, I think that the goal is a common goal. I think they're both fighting for the same thing. It's just they're going about it different ways, and it would be fantastic if both parties, Heather and the natives and Kevin, could all just hook up, iron out their differences. I suppose that's probably a very simplistic and ideal world kind of scenario. But, it would be nice if they could just iron their differences out and just get together. And
how about sitting around in circle, getting the old peace pipe out?
The peace pipe?
Getting the peace pipe.
Yeah, absolutely.
The
sit
pipe
around the circle. Get
the pipe of peace.
The pipe of peace. Bring your own roll-ups, yes.
Yes.
I have no problem with that.
And because infighting really doesn't help and doesn't work, because it gives power back to the cabal when they see the alternative movement fighting with each other. So maybe sit around and have peace pipe. Right, just a couple of things we're going to go through before we finish up. What's Vin doing on TNS tonight?
He's just going to do what Vin does best. He's going to be shooting the breeze, and as usual, it'll be shooting the breeze with a difference. He'll have a great topic. He always does have a great show, to be fair. I think you could stick a match in front of Vin, and Vin could create a show around that match. That's not to say it'd be boring. He would make it very, very interesting, because all his shows are interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
so he does. Like he did say earlier on, that it's just himself on tonight, so it's kind of he'll go with the flow.
Right.
Like a twig on the shoulders of the mighty stream.
There you go. Are you reading William Shakespeare or something?
No.
No, okay.
That's actually a quote from a film with John Candy.
Okay.
Anyone name that film, there's probably a couple of bumper stickers in it somewhere.
Well, I tell you, if people want free bumper stickers, all you have to do is put your name and address on the back of a fiver and send it in to us, and we'll be able to give you free bumper stickers. The whole idea is to raise funds to get more and generate this campaign and keep it going. The money gets reinvested back in. We said that last week. So it's not for us, it's to reinvest and have this campaign where we see the majority cars in Ireland and vans with stickers on saying I'm awake and realising what's going on. That's what we want to see. So if you can do that, that'd be fantastic. To we'll be, I say, as soon as the bumper stickers come in, we'll let you know, and we'll be putting up the stuff on the website. Now, we are working on a new OYM website at the moment, so that's in hand, and we just a few things to do. There's going to be minor changes. Well, minor, quite major, I think, major changes on the website. But as I say, we'll let you know as soon as we launch it. We'll send out an email and let everybody know, so you can come along, have a look, and give us your opinion on it. But that's really the news for now. Next week we have Colin. Remember, we had Colin on for a brief interview. He's the orgonite man, as we call him. He drives around Ireland putting orgonite stones on mobile phone masts to change the negative chi energy into positive chi energy. And he makes his own. Now, his website, he has launched a new website where you can go and buy these orgonite stones. And I think for the price of them, they're a great gift, because they're not only like a paperweight. I mean, they look lovely, but it's not only a paperweight, it's actually doing something positive. And if you want to check into the history of these orgonite stones, or orgonite itself, and the chembusters, go to YouTube and type Wilhelm Reich, which is a German scientist who started the ball rolling with all this orgon energy. So check it out. So when you come along next week, you'll be more informed and you'll know what it's all about. And we have Colin on for a full interview, and we'll be talking all about orgonite and what we can do. Especially if you have mobile phone masts around you, you can buy these stones for 5, 10, 15 euro, and just go over and stick it beside the mast. And apparently that's all you need to do. So a bit of research on that, but that's really it. And as we mentioned, Friday the 1st of March is when Enda Kenny is apparently going to make an appearance at the Headford Arms in Kells at 7:30 for a do. there. So if you do want to go and protest, or just turn up and see what the Taoiseach looks like, because obviously we don't see him these days. You know, he's a bit like Elvis.
Yeah.
You know.
If you want to egg, what did you say earlier? Egg him on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, the jokes are all coming out now. There's going to be a big demand for eggs in Kells. You know, on the Friday. I reckon.
Free range are always best.
Free range, yeah. Okay.
Just want to say congratulations to T.I. on the TNS chat. Me and my big mouth. When the stickers come in, I'll personally buy 5 for you for a $5. So just send us in your address if you like. We'll get them off to you as soon as they come in. The answer was planes, trains, and automobiles.
You and your big mouth. Right, okay, yeah. No, that was a good movie. Have you seen the game last night?
What?
That was in the... You know,
we've seen the game.
Yeah,
See
the game last night.
Yeah.
But that's it. So next week, so during the week, we've going to catch up. I really want to try and start understanding and hearing more about this People's Trust. Because if it promises what it says, then basically the whole kind of domino effect is just the whole system's going to come down. But there are skeptics out there saying, yeah, right, okay, whatever. So I think we have to be on our guard that it's not another kind of false flag or another kind of hope that it's not going to materialise. So check out the videos on YouTube and, you know, see if it resonates with you. See what you think yourself. Steve?
Yeah.
What are you doing the week? Anything planned?
Yes, actually, I do. I have... As you can see there, if you can have a look on the screen, there's a plethora of links from the TNS chat and also from our own chat as well that came up during the show of, you know, the pros and cons against Kevin, and I'm going to check out those during the week.
Check them out and see what's happening. Okay, yeah. So until next week, stay safe. If there's any news, let us know. For myself, Alan James, take it easy, and we'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Said like a professional, true pro.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, 1 minute to go. I won't even hog the minute. So, head on over to tnsradio.ning.com. You have Vin there at 9 p.m. for a fantastic show, as it always is. So until next week, I'll say adieu from Steve and George. Take it easy. Take care. And have a good week. A good week? A week? I'll put my feet on them. Have a good week. Bye.
Give us a call on 046 90.
Okay, he plays the wrong jingle. We'll try that again. See you next week.